I'm Dad Flaky,
I'm Lilibet Flaky.
and this is Pointless Global News. On today's show, a Canadian man celebrates their hockey loss by taking a chainsaw to his TV.
Then, the condom supply at the Winter Olympics lasts only 3 days.
Next, a naked man steals an ambulance with a patient inside. Spoiler alert, it did not happen in Florida. That story is later, but first. The United States men's hockey team defeated Canada 2-1 in overtime on Sunday to claim Olympic gold for the first time since the 1980 Miracle on Ice. To put things in perspective, the Miracle is an event so old that most of the current roster only knows about it from a Disney movie. Canada had gone undefeated through the entire tournament, compiling a record that hockey statisticians would later describe as completely meaningless in retrospect. The entire country needs a wellness check right now. Canada entered the final without Sidney Crosby, who was sidelined by injury in what historians will eventually classify as the single most consequential Canadian medical event ever since Tommy Douglas invented public health care. Crosby, a two-time gold medalist and the closest thing Canada has to a deity who files taxes, watched from somewhere that wasn't out on the ice. Canadian hockey analysts noted that while the team played admirably without their generational talent, admirably is a word that only appears on silver medals. Within hours of the loss, a video surfaced on social media showing a Canadian man in a tookie walking calmly into frame, carrying a chainsaw, approaching his television set with the quiet determination of a man who had thought things through, but unfortunately arrived at the wrong answer. The clip spread rapidly across X, where the internet's geopolitical analysts immediately weighed in. Quote, "He's not Canadian," end quote. Another observed that if this were an average Canadian living room, they would have more issues than what we thought. They went on to suggest that the chainsaw was perhaps the fourth most concerning element in the frame, based on the visible inventory of empty cans and stacked wood. Prime Minister Mark Carney posted on X that the team was coming home with 21 hard-fought Olympic medals, a sentence designed to redirect attention from the one medal they didn't win to the 21 medals at least one person was currently chainsawing a television over. Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre told the team to keep your heads up keep your heads held up high, which is odd advice for a country whose national posture could best be described as drunkenly slumping into a bar stool in Montreal. Meanwhile, in Toronto, fan Matthew Dickens stood inside Scotiabank Arena and told reporters the loss was, quote, "probably, honestly, one of the worst moments in my life," a claim he made in public, on the record, about hockey, and to which no single person in earshot thought to challenge or contextualize because they all agreed with him. Dickens had entered the arena believing he was watching probably the best team that ever existed, and left confronting the possibility that the best team to ever exist had just lost to Connor Hellebuck, that's the goalie for the U.S. team, and a country that doesn't care about hockey until the Super Bowl is over, if even then. At La Cage aux Sports, a man quietly observed that the U.S. was just having a great goalie and that the ending was really unfortunate. Two phrases delivered with the emotional range of a shipping forecast. However, this is the tried and true French-Canadian method. You do not grieve publicly. You simply describe the loss as weather and move on. Others retreated to the internet, where coping mechanisms ranged from the poetic going to drown my feelings in maple syrup and sit in silence in my igloo, to the geopolitical, on a positive note, back to the real world. We live in Canada and not the clown show that is the USA, wrote one user, executing the national pivot from "we lost at hockey" to "have you seen their healthcare system?" As of press time, the chainsaw man remained unidentified. The television remained in two pieces, and Canada quietly began updating its national identity to emphasize universal healthcare, bilingualism, and move on from a sport it would prefer not to discuss right now.
If ever somebody needed a rage room, it was this man. He could have broken several televisions and not destroyed what I think may have been his own television set.
Fortunately, he remains unidentified.
That's true, but
That eliminates the embarrassment anyway.
that's what rage rooms are for, right?
Exactly.
When we think of Olympic athletes, we picture competitors performing at the top of their game, heroes who are capable of feats of superhuman endurance that most of us mere mortals could never hope to attain. Keep that in mind as you read the next sentence. The Milan Olympic Village ran out of condoms after just 3 days. Do you believe in miracles? Yes. Every Olympic competitor spends decades in training just to reach the Games. They endure countless hours of endless practice, opt out of normal social lives, and risk devastating injuries day after day, month after month, year after year. While it's clear the athletes are having a good time, there are a few less fun explanations for the run on prophylactics. After all, nothing kills the mood faster than invoking the laws of supply and demand. According to Italian newspaper La Stampa, in Paris, the athletes received 300,000 condoms, 2 per day each. But the numbers for these Winter Games were significantly lower, not even 10,000. It's no surprise that protection would be readily available in Paris, to the point that the number of condoms would exceed the entire populations of several Olympic nations. But Milan, making less than 10,000 condoms available for more than 2,900 Olympians, covering 16 days? Has Italy ever met athletes? That wouldn't even be enough for one Wilt Chamberlain. Chances are that some of the current Olympians have swiped handfuls of Milan 2026 condoms for the same reason. But even factoring that in, it's fair to assume that countless others are using them for their intended purpose. Never has there been a more sterling example of athletes living up to the Olympic motto, faster, higher, stronger, together. I don't know why the Olympics has to supply their athletes with condoms in the first place. These are grown people. They need to bring their own supply or go to a store and buy their own. But what I have read about this situation is that they take them for souvenirs
Yeah,
and hand them out to
you
people.
could call it a boner bonus, I guess, right?
There you go.
Yeah, I'm
I don't have anything else to say about that.
That's well, you shouldn't. Anyway, finally, a police department in Wisconsin got such a bizarre emergency call this week that the responders couldn't believe their ears. They had to ask themselves twice to make sure they heard it right. A naked man had stolen an ambulance with a stretcher-bound patient inside. Benjamin Feltz was already on the run from the law without a threat on his body when he came across a parked ambulance. Despite paramedics' best efforts to prevent him, he jumped into the driver's seat and sped off. What followed was a nearly 20-mile chase involving multiple law enforcement agencies. Over his rampage, Phelps plowed through multiple spike mats and other implements meant to stop him. Miraculously, they had no effect. Finally, cops were able to force the rogue ambulance off the road and into a muddy field, although he initially refused to cooperate. Phelps eventually did surrender without incident. As a silver lining, the patient trapped in the ambulance did survive and was taken to a hospital to receive the care that they needed. Phelps, meanwhile, is facing a hilarious long list of charges for his antics. Yet the strangest part of this whole thing is that it did not happen in Florida. This outlandish series of events began on Tuesday, February 17th, in the city of Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin. Initially, though, it didn't involve an ambulance. According to the Wisconsin Rapids Police Department, Benjamin Welts was on the run and evading law enforcement officers. We couldn't find what he had done to earn the cops' attention, but we're going to guess it had something to do with him running around buck naked. Around 5:30 in the afternoon, Welts allegedly stopped to do push-ups in public, still without any clothes on, as I guess you do in Wisconsin Rapids. At that point, he noticed an ambulance parked nearby. 2 paramedics were attending a health emergency call and had placed the unidentified patient into the back of the ambulance for care. Phelps saw an opportunity and climbed into the driver's seat. At that point, the paramedics noticed the unclothed stranger messing with their vehicle. One paramedic reportedly got out of the ambulance and attempted to get Phelps away from the wheel. He, however, started the engine. The second paramedic, still in the vehicle, tried to prevent Phelps from taking off, but he too was reportedly forced out of the ambulance. With that, Phelps was off to the races. He drove off with the patient still in the back. With Wood County Sheriff's Department assistance, the Wisconsin Rapids Police deployed several tire deflation devices to stop Phelps. However, in his naked fury, he plowed through the obstacles without slowing down. Finally, officers from the Pittsfield Police Department, who had come to support their fellow cops, were successful in stopping Phelps. They threw stop sticks on the road that shredded the ambulance front tires. Without being able to control the vehicle, Phelps slid off the road. The ambulance finally came to a stop in a muddy field just west of Pittsfield. It was all handled very well by our officers, as well as those neighboring jurisdictions that stepped in to assist us. He commended the attending officers. The patient was lucky enough not to get hurt during the incident, and their condition hadn't gotten worse. According to news reports, the person was quickly taken to a hospital for further treatment.
It seems that this probably happens more often than it should, that people see an ambulance and they take off in it. Don't you think that the ambulance drivers would know better than to leave their keys in the car?
Well, it's rural Wisconsin. But, but like I said earlier, it's ironic that it didn't happen in Florida.
That is ironic. It's probably happening in Florida as we speak.
Yeah, that's probably true. And with that, it's a wrap for another Pointless Global News. Be sure to follow us wherever you get podcasts. I'm Tad Flakey.
I'm Lilibet Flakey.
Stay pointless, my friend.